Good evening and welcome along to our Tuesday edition here on Not Another Rangers podcast. Forget Hannibal Lecter, it was Yanis Hadji channeling his inner Anthony Hopkins to silence the Lambs on Sunday. A point snatched from the jaws of defeat after a first half horror show. And speaking of horror, is it end of days for Ross McCausland's time at Ibrox? Let's hope so. Will that red card be the final nail in the coffin of his Rangers career? And the Punch and Judy of Scottish football, Chris Boyd and Chris Sutton, have fallen victim to social media microscope this week. We ask if clickbait punditry has served its day, or is there room for child's play? And will easy for me to say, and will Bilbao be our final destination with the small matter of the Europa League quarter-final on the way? Do Barry Ferguson and these players have the minerals to achieve a semi? Or will Big Cyril Dessers drag us all to hell? And that is an intro that I have well and truly snookered tonight. But joining me to hopefully pick me back up is Ross Clark. Ross, how are we, mate?
Mate, he'd picked up after that, man. It's the pressure. Broke 1,000 views last week, and that's it. We're done. You've ruined it for us all.
I think I get through by somebody on social media. I think I was a Ross County fan today, mate. I think that's what's through me, and I've not recovered for that. So let's get straight into it. I think the first thing I sort of want to touch upon is Ross McCausland, and a wider point as such. He came through the youth academy at Ibrox, and obviously Clermont threw him in maybe at the deep end last season, but he says he was surprised that for the last 2 years previously he didn't train with the first team. But I'm kind of thinking there's maybe reasons for that. But us as a club, are we developing youth players in the correct manner? Because I look at our youth players and there's a distinct lack of physicality. I feel that they're not filled out as well as maybe players at other clubs within the league are, and we don't expose them to enough game time. But is that due to the fact that, some sort of failure in the coaching setup from the transition of youth into pro, or are we just not recruiting players good enough, mate? Does it need ripped up and started again?
Right, on Ross McCausland, I've been getting a down since he first broke into the team. Like, genuinely never seen it with him at all, Davie. So I feel quite happy in my opinion of him the first time I seen him, that he would never make it at Rangers. I think we spoke a wee bit last week about youth coming through at Rangers and how we use them and the expectation to win. And I think you can see it with, like, say, a Bailey Rice, the boy Curtis, who's came in and grabbed the opportunity. But for me, Ross McCausland's never looked good to me. He gets to the byline, and my wee 10-year-old lassie could kick the ball harder. And I remember he scored a goal in Europe, hit the post and in. Who was that against? And everybody was like, "Oh, get it round you."
Malmo, wasn't it? Malmo away.
I dare say if there wasn't pictures of him as a young fellow celebrating certain days, he wouldn't be anywhere near the Rangers first team, and he wouldn't have anywhere near the amount of time that folk are still wanting to invest in him. Like, I've seen high profile Rangers podcasters, mate, who still wax lyrical and talk about him as if he's some 17, 18-year-old boy, and he's no. What I would say on the youth development is I think it's somewhere we've got to get a lot better. If we are going and mopping up the best youth players in the country, and we're bringing them to Auchenhowie and giving them tours of the place, and they're getting the best of nutrition, the best of coaching, the best of this, the best of that, best in class, as some might call it. But we're not seeing any of them breaking through. And as we spoke about last week, you look at Bailey Rice, who we took because he was a better prospect than Miller, but we're not giving them the opportunity. And I think a lot of this, I actually speak to my dad about this quite a lot, but I look back to 2012, mate, and I think we really, really, really blundered in 2012, giving out contracts to the likes of your Fran Sandazas, Kevin Kyles, when you could probably have got a team of guys out the work that would have won you the third division. Do you know what I mean? I think even back then, rather than try to build something in a youth team that could have came through the leagues together and then you had an experience, we went straight back to throwing money at people, and that's an interesting point. I'm not sure it is the physicality, Davie. I'm not sure it is that. I think it's the huge expectations are playing for Rangers, and as we spoke about last week as well with Bailey Rice, it's the fact that youth in our team seem to know that they're going to get put in. They'll maybe play a game. As soon as they have a shiter, they're going to get pat back out. But so they're trying to do everything. They're trying to do everything in that short period of time, rather than maybe getting a run of 3 or 4 games and being able to play at their own natural game and bed themselves in. They're trying to do too much to impress at the time. But Gary makes a point there that the lack of good young Scottish players anywhere at the moment. There's no exactly many, is there? We've probably snapped up the second best of them with Cameron coming to us next year. But apart from him and Lennon Miller, how many other young Scottish boys, Penrice maybe, that you could go and get them and they would come in and stake a place in a Rangers team? So it's a bit of a conundrum, but I hope that Kevin Thompson, obviously we spoke about him potentially if Gerrard came in playing that Beale role, but I also think that the Auchenhowie and the youth setup and that transition and pathway for youth to first team, I think that having a guy like that in there that knows what it means is also a really good step for the club, and I hope that beyond the end of this season he gets kept in. If it's not around about the first team, then definitely within that kind of youth setup.
But Ross, we no official reserve league and the B team league being scrapped in terms of us deciding no go down and playing in the 4th or 5th tier of Scottish football. What is the solution to develop players? Do we need to try and attempt to send all our players of that level that are about to make the step for sort of B team to first team out on loan, and regardless of your squad pool, take a chance that we're not carrying a few passengers? And if we are carrying passengers, they're maybe the lower end of the quality, but the guys that we believe have got a chance to make it should be going to competitive teams, maybe higher end of the Scottish Championship or League One, League Two down in England, in order to sort of get them ready. Because I look back to probably the last set of players that we done this way, and it was probably Charlie Adam going to St Mirren, you know, when Le Guin was about to come in, and then he was then bled into the first team, and then Walter Smith gave him his chance as well when he took over for Le Guin. But other than that, the sort of conveyor belt of talent coming through, albeit, as you say, going down the leagues and coming back up, there's not been enough, and I just don't know what the solution is. So can you pinpoint that? What is the right answer there?
I think the lack of reserve team football kills Scottish football, to be honest. You think back to the days when you had a reserve league and you had a mix. You had all your best young players and they were going up against, you were playing in Old Firm games, and you had recovering players that were coming back for injury playing in the games. You had players who were maybe on the fringes of the first team playing in them. You had young up and coming talent. So you had that real blend where they were playing against, when they disrespect to the Highland League and the Lowland League and the bottom leagues in Scotland, you're playing against a decent quality of player that are not out to just put you up in the air. Played junior myself, it's physical, it'll get them up to a certain level of being used to playing in amongst men, but the technicalities of it are not exactly going to be stretching them. You look at Lowry, I think everybody would agree Lowry was outstanding when we were playing in when he was playing against the kind of part-time players and that, but then he went to Hearts, and through injury and through maybe lack of effort, some might say, lack of attitude, whatever it is, never really coped well there. But as you say, you look back to that team of the likes of your Adams, Alan McGregor went and done a couple of loan spells and came back a much better goalkeeper for it. So to be honest, I don't know what the solution is, but I do think that Scotland misses having a really good competitive reserve league for all the things I'm just saying. The likes of the the likes of your Cortez's, Danilos, we could have a full first team injured players in the reserves coming back anyway. It would be basically our first 11. But I think that the restructuring and the talk of doing stuff where the leagues making the SPFL pyramid system changing, making the SPFL Premiership bigger, the likes of that, does that open up? If we were to get a 14-16 team top league, does that allow you to send maybe a couple of players to a Falkirk and a Broth, an Airdrie, whoever it is, and they play at a slightly higher level in that pyramid system? I don't really know.
You touch on an interesting point in regards to reconstruction, and I think it's just the whole of Scottish football and how it's packaged. There's been a lot of traction online, social media, in regards to the pantomime act that is Chris Boyd and Chris Sutton, and a lot of people have made comments on it. Now, for me personally, I think how Scottish football is broadcast is absolutely tin pot. When you've got the example of Sky, who is a major broadcaster, and we've got games that involve the two high-profile teams this season in terms of us and Celtic, where there's been incidents where the ball has potentially went out or no went out, and we can't say with any degree of certainty 100% whether that ball is definitely out or still in play. And how much would it cost them to run a camera along the goal line to let us know, or the byline, the touch line? But would that happen in English football? It wouldn't. And that's the frustration for me. I think a lot of people have made a point that they're trying to go down this sort of Carragher Neville route and everybody replicates it. I don't think that's worked. But as somebody that pays to watch football, I want to hear football intellects talk about the game, the people that have played at the highest level, that know what they're talking about, that can educate you on the game. I think that's what I class as good punditry. And for me, there's not enough of that in Scottish football. You look at the highlights and how it's packaged on BBC, you know, you've got that Jonathan Sutherland, who I think is a dreadful broadcaster, but the highlights, that's somebody recording it in a wee studio doing a dub over with the commentary. We can't even provide live commentary to give you the sense of being at the game and catching the atmosphere. And that's just sort of one element of Scottish football. Where do you stand on how it's broadcast and how we sell it to the wider support?
Well, the VAR we've got here is like the bottom of the brand, isn't it? Is it no something like we've got 8 cameras and everywhere else that's got it runs off of like 16, 17. So right away, in a league that is always, well, should be a 2-horse league at the moment, if we're honest with ourselves, it's a bit of a 1-horse league this year. But when there's going to be games, I think back to the cup final, big decisions, we can't even use the VR we've got, right? And a lot of it goes back, Davie, to referees no being full-time for a start, where they can concentrate on learning their profession. These guys are getting £800, £1,200 every single week to pull on that strip and go, and if they make an arse of it, there's no really any clapback. That affects the product, the amount of mistakes. Willie Collum on his show telling you how many mistakes they make every month, even though they've got VR, that doesn't help. You go into Punch and Judy, and that got old 5 years ago. The Boyd and Sutton thing. Chris Sutton is a pantomime villain, right? He goes in and he literally talks shite constantly, knowing fine well that Rangers fans will bite. And the worst ones in a lot are us, because we've got a section of our fan base that give him the clicks, give him everything. Just ignore him, man. He offers nothing. Me and you spoke a wee bit the other day through text, and for me, some of the guys that haven't played in old firm, Andy Halliday has, and he's one of them. But I very much value Marvin Bartley. I very much value listening to Andy Halliday. God, whisper it on this podcast. Neil Lennon's very balanced and very fair, in my opinion, as a pundit. And you just think to yourself that Sutton and Boyd both played many, many games between between their careers up here, and some of the drivel and the arguments and the bitching, as you say, if you're watching that for down in England, you turn off, wouldn't you? So I think that there's definitely a lot of improvements we could make to the product, but it seems to me that the SPFL only care about this. They're now talking about going back to a 10-team league so that they can keep 4 Old Firm games. But see if they extended the lead, went to 2 Old Firm games, and you ended up going with a product and spent money on it elsewhere, as you say, the broadcasting, the VAR, the referees, all the stuff that goes round about it, you might get a better, well-rounded product that folk would actually pay money to watch.
Well, I think you make a fair point there. And this thing about 4 Old Firm games is how you package it. Now, Neil Doncaster's been in charge of Scottish football for too long. But see if you're a good salesman and you make a 16-team league, your Old Firm games become more valuable because there's only 2 of them. So you've got to sell that. That should get a broadcaster to pay more, because the potential of them having an outcome on a title race would have more of an impact than playing each other 4 times a season if you're only playing twice. So how you articulate that in a business meeting, I think, says a lot about, the man that's at the helm, unfortunately. And when we were going through COVID times, and I think there's been 2 different occasions during his tenure where he's failed to get a sponsor for the league. And in fact, when we got the Cinch deal, that's because he paid a subcontractor company $450,000 to get us a sponsor for the league. Now, what is his salary? It's close to, being run about that mark. So surely if that's his remit, the CEO, he should be responsible for going getting that sponsor. But again, he's spending money that could be used at grassroots level to secure a sponsorship deal. And I just think he's proved time and time again that he's not the right man for the game. There's not enough people, I think, in the mainstream media shining a light on him, because there is a good product here. There is good teams. There's good teams at the top end of the championship. And if you expand the league and make it more competitive, the relegation thing is a complete nonsense as well, Ross. You've got 1 team going down, and the team that finishes 11th plays a playoff against a team that's potentially played 3 playoff games before they've had a crack at them. What? It's just, they're disadvantaged. This sporting integrity thing has been bandied about for years, but it simply does not apply in Scottish football. And I think it's something that we need to look at, because for me, a 16-team league is a way to go. And I think a lot of fans have had enough of the split, but I don't think moving back to a 10 is an option. It either goes to 16 or something higher, or continues as a 12. What's your thoughts on that?
Mate, you look at this desperation to keep 4 Old Firm games because they're what sells the package, and then the supercomputer decides to pat the last Old Firm game of the season right in between the 2 semi-finals if we were to go through against Bilbao on Thursday. So Rangers are going to play a reserve team, aren't they, if we get through? So that's one that you've just threw away anyway. Who's going to pay to watch Celtic battering Rangers under 18s? I don't understand why that is. I heard Stevie Clifford this morning on the Rangers review saying if we were to go through against Bilbao, he would be making a public show trying to get that game postponed and played later on, because it's the money maker. But as you say, Doncaster's not really done anything. Scottish football's not got any better in the full time that guy's been at the helm. His wages are getting better every year, you can guarantee that. He's taking a lot of money out. That his wage would probably run a lot of the teams in League 2 for a season. So, mate, it's so frustrating, as you say. There's ties in the last 6 fixtures, 5 fixtures after the split that really would make for good viewing, and even at that, you're getting this. The list for Skies came out, and it's all Rangers and Celtic dead rubbers that are getting played. You're not getting any of these games that have got a bit of magnitude because the contract is so. Now, being a Rangers fan, the same as you, do I want to watch Rangers on the telly? Of course I want to watch Rangers on the telly. But at the same time, you look at some of the fixtures that could be on that are being shunted, and you go, Rangers against Aberdeen, when second and third are both clinched, but you've got a game that's going on in the bottom half of the table that could determine who goes up, who goes down. Now, you spoke a wee bit about the playoffs, and that's the exact same. Obviously, the team that finishes 11th, now, if you're in the Championship, that could be 2 teams, 3 teams that finish second, third and fourth in the Championship. They could be part-time teams. They're out working all day and then playing midweek fixtures, and then they're playing Saturday, Wednesday before you even get a hold of them in the Saturday or the Wednesday. Now, if I remember right, the years Ander left St Johnstone, they were in the playoffs and they ended up going through. But I remember even speaking at the time about that and saying it's catered towards keeping the same status quo as much as possible in the top league, and it takes away some of the excitement. That playoff should be 11th plays 4th, 2nd plays 3rd, and then a final at the end up.
No, I think that's fair comment, Ross. And just to sort of round up on it, with Dean Crocker for years, obviously on TNT, they've got Rory, and Rory does Premier Sports as well. But I just think it's time to freshen it up as a whole, because we're used to the same stuff. And Sky done it a few years ago. Martin Tyler had his run at doing the games for him, and they wanted to freshen it up. They brought Peter Drury in. I just think it's time the fans get, because we pay in enough, to go to the games, to watch the games. If you're following Scottish football, I think it's 3 or sometimes 4 different subscriptions you need to pay depending on what competition you're playing, because you'll have Premier Sports, you'll have TNT, you'll have Sky and Amazon Prime. That just can't be sustained, and I think that is a big failure on Doncaster, the fact that Scottish football fans have to pay 4 different broadcasters to watch every game in Scottish football throughout the year. That's just not sustainable going forward, is it?
No. That's why so many people are going to one broadcaster for Warren, Davie. Not that we can do it on this podcast, but that's why so many people are watching the game with a lag. No, it's not sustainable, mate. It's spread across 4 or 5 different broadcasters. The commentary is brutal. For me, the worst commentary is if we look in-house. That's a major issue when you're a club supporting citizen like myself that pays his monthly subscription to Rangers TV, and you're getting Tom commentator. That in itself. Remember when Clive was doing our games during COVID?
Aye, mate.
They were beautiful, weren't they? That
different
was
level. Also, just on that, I thought that brought Tomo's game up. I think that helped Tomo in terms of how he's putting his analysis across. I thought him and Clive were good together on the Rangers TV during the COVID spell. But
mate, tell you what's mad, folk will tell you that Kevin Thompson's boring. Folk will tell you he's dead boring on commentary, and I'm like, no, he's thorough and he's measured in what he says, and he tells you what's happening. He's no screaming and bawling and shouting. And mate, Tom commentator screams and balls and shouts for a pass through, and you score goals, and then it's a goal. You watch back highlights, Rangers TV, you watch back highlights of big massive moments, and you could hear a pin drop. So if we could sort that in-house first, that would be absolutely grand with a takeover. That's one of the first things I'd be looking to change the experience of.
Well, you've sort of gave me a nice segue there, because something that I wanted to touch on was how you think the club's been ran since Patrick Stewart's come into town. Now, there's a lot of issues that need to be addressed. I'm not sure if Patrick Stewart's here for the long term. For what it's worth, I'll give my take. I think he's here to facilitate the sale of the club. I think that's the main reason he's been brought in. And I think him creating that sort of tension where a certain element of the fan base is ought to keep doing the external noise that he thinks might impact the sale of the club, because I think that's his number one remit. If we've seen the extension of the seats in the Broomlin and all that's been kiboshed during this period of time. What's happening with the stadium bar that's supposed to be up where the club shop used to be? That seems to be a delayed project that's not came to fruition. There isn't sort of anything major that happened. If we can look back at the January window, that would have helped us, make us more competitive for the remainder of the campaign. So the way I see it is, it's almost been a cost-cutting measure, bringing him in to say minimum spend for the club, and I'll try and look to get as a buyer. And I think that's potentially, the only reason he's here. I think he's got to watch, though, and how he gets that relationship with the supporters, because if you lose that, it might not be repairable. And I think he's got to tread carefully between now and the end of the season that he doesn't say anything that sort of disrupts that, especially during the sale of season tickets.
Can I pull a Gary on this one, mate? 'Cause I don't want to lose my job. I don't want to lose my job. I'm panicking. Mate, Patrick Stewart for me is a wee goblin that just doesn't get it. I think he's very quick to put the boot into Rangers fans rather than asking questions of other people. I think the way he speaks in some of his press quotations, club statements, I think is very derogatory against the fan base who rallied round the club and kept the club going all through the lower divisions and got us to a place where he can come in on his nice big cushy salary. I find him quite unlikable as a person, mate. As I've said before, he looks like one of the caricatures somebody would draw down in Benidorm Beach as well. He doesn't look like a Rangers employee. I don't. If he facilitates, as you say, if he's here to facilitate, because I believe he was quite involved in the Manchester United takeover, and that's one of his CV highlights was overseeing that. I'm the same as you. I want Rangers to be a football club. I want Rangers to be a football club. I love Everyone Anyone campaign. I think it's great. I think that it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, none of that. We all love Rangers. We've got that in common. Let's go and watch them. And to me, that's where it should stop. We're a football club. And I think at the moment, the club are putting out statements about a wealth of topics, but at the same time are gone the other way into different things that are nothing to do with a football club. And I think there's a certain element of our support who believe that Rangers is a football club, and there's other people who agree with political statements. For me, we're just a football club, and we should stick to that.
No, I think that's a fair comment. Something that I want to sort of touch on as well is he brought in the consultancy firm to do a deep dive on every sort of aspect of the football club, and then he made the sort of switch with Coppin, going back to technical director as part of his rebranding. He's looking for a sporting director. Now, we touched on Coppin last week briefly, but if we are actually to look at recruitment as a whole, as a wider project at Rangers, I think it's fair to say the last 4 years it's been absolutely shambolic. And obviously Coppin came in on January 2024, and since then there's been 13 signings, and I'll just name them for everybody in the comments: Fabio Silva, Mohamed Diamande, Oscar Cortez, Bajrami, Proper, Igaman, Cherny, Yefti, Barron, Kelly, Inciala, Big Cash, and then Fernandez. Now, if you look at that, what I think is telling, Ross, is that there's no a lot of starters there looking at that say they jump into my Rangers team. And if he's been tasked with building the Rangers side that competes for the championship, he's got to have a strike rate that's close to 75 and 80%. And I think his strike rate is more akin to about 25%, if we're being kind. Out of the aim, I think in our group chat today, the general consensus was that there's maybe 4 that get pass marks in terms of the 13, and then the rest of the jury's either out or they're a miss. So where do you stand on where our recruitment is? Is it that we're recruiting for the wrong type of player, the wrong type of character, all of the above? Should we be looking to recruit players into formations, or should we be looking to recruit players of a certain physicality, of a certain technical ability? What is the answer going forward to solve what is a massive problem at the club?
I think we're recruiting players based on getting told, or this boy's a decent signing, go and get him, without doing our due diligence on the player and whether he fits into Scottish football. Looking at that, I just got your list up there, mate. So Silva, I've already had my feelings on him. If figures are to be believed, £2.5 million he cost us last season, loan fee and wages, when you could have got Shankland for 3 and had him for the next 5 years. People will tell me Shankland's been crap this year. I've got my own feelings on it. He's been played as a 10 because they've got nobody else that can hold the ball up. And if he played up front for Rangers, he would score plenty. He would have, in my opinion, would have won his league last year. The 3 games we struggled in. Diamandi, nobody's going to deny that there's a player in there with Diamandi, but is he suited to the hustle and bustle of Scottish football? No, and I think that's why he shines. We could have got Lennon Miller for the same money. So I then look at Fernandez, 6-month loan. Could have had Katic. Katic was stunning with his draws at his ankles, begging us to take him, and we never took him. You look at
Ross, I'm just going to stop you there to thank Cammy for his super chat that came in. Absolutely outstanding, Cammy, donating £10 to his chat. Thanks very much. And obviously that'll go towards the goal with the Walter campaign that we'll touch on at the end of the show. But absolute top man, Cammy. Thank you very much, mate.
Thank you, Cammy. Cortez, signing an obligation to buy on a guy who missed 80%, 90% of his loan spell. Ludicrous. Bajrami, panic buy. Proper, again, we get done with a Black Friday sale for him. If you take him the day, you can get him for £1.5 million, but yesterday you could have got him for £1 million. Igamani is proper football player, but again, Coppin is overseeing the footballing department, and Igamani's values gone because we keep playing him out of position.
Ross, just on that point, I want to touch on you, mate, because I think you'll be able to elaborate on that. Did we not see on Sunday why he should be playing as the 9? Because he's a threat. He can hold the ball. He's so technically gifted, and he can shoot for any sort of range, both feet. And if he's got maybe 2-3 chances in a game, you would put your hat on him making one of the 3. It could the same be said to the other guy that he's vying for the position with? So
people say to me, Dessers gets in positions more than Igamani would, because Igamani wants to get about the park and hold the ball up. Blah, blah. What I would tell you is Igamani creates more chances than Dessers for other people, but also in the Dundee game where Dessers had 12 shots, so even if Igamani isn't in the position to get the 12 shots, even if he only gets 4 of them, I'm taking him to score 2. So Dessers needs 12 to score 1. On Thursday, personally, I would have Igamani up there because I don't think we'll have a lot of the ball and it's got to stick when it goes up. And also, I don't think you're going to get a lot of chances. It might be the case of sticking one like he did against Celtic on the half volley for the edge of the box. Dessers doesn't score many for the edge of the box. But I still think Barry Ferguson, the reason why Igamani played the full game at the weekend is because Dessers is your man for Thursday.
And I really hope that's not the case. But then obviously, if you've got Igamani there, the next one in the list would be Cherny. Obviously, he's a loan signing. Do you think that's been a hit or a miss, Ross?
I would say he's been a hit, mate. I would say he's been a hit purely because he's a forward player who's getting numbers in the league. If you take out his goal contributions, and you've got shuddered right through my body there saying Ross McCausland on the right. Cherny's definitely been a hit, but that's the kind of player, when you're taking an £11 million player on loan, that's the kind of person you want to have an option or an obligation to buy on. But we've obviously not put that in there. And I think what you'll find is similar to Tillman and Seema before him, you'll no get him back next year. I think he'll be destined for bigger things, even though I think he's come out now publicly and said he'd like to stay. The kind of fee and wages that he'll command elsewhere, I don't think you'll have any chance of keeping him, which is a shame, because I've grown to love him. I was quite sceptical about him at first, Davie, but I think now that you're looking back over the course of the season, he's been really effective. And I think that next season, if you played him in that floating 10 behind the striker, I think he would give you goals and assists for that position.
And obviously, left back's a problem issue, right? Because Ridvan, we thought there was some potential there at the start, and then he just had a barren spell of injury after injury. And then he's come in this season and he's flattered to deceive. He's had some moments, but he's had some really honking performances. It'd be interesting your thoughts on Yefty. Do you think he can be developed long-term, Ross, or do you think we might need to strike where the iron's hot, and if there's interest this summer, just move him on? Because, again, I'm not really sure whether he sits on the hit-or-miss category for me.
Based on right now, mate, he's a miss. He's a miss for me. I see Big Gary on this chat's got him as a hit. So if Gary says he's a hit, he'll definitely be a miss. 100%. Mate, he's another one of the defenders that can't defend. We've got a real talent for signing wing-backs that can't do it at the other end and cost us goals. The difference when you had Barisic and Tavernier was both of them gave you goals and assists at the other end. I think it's hefty now sitting on like 2 assists this season. That's all he's got for the full season. So off the top of your head, I could probably tell you 4 or 5 goals that he sold in the Europa League, never mind even getting into league form. So I would have him in the miss category, but as I said in the group chat earlier, I'm happy to give him another year to develop. Now he's had a season in Scotland. Sometimes players need that, especially young players coming, don't know the language, moving to a different country, different climate. I think you've seen a bit of that with Nicholas Kuhn last year. Looked terrible, but this season kicked on a bit. Looks terrible again now, right enough. But I think sometimes young players have got to give them that wee bit of leeway to get up to speed with the pressures that we've already spoke about, and playing for Rangers in front of 50,000, living in the Glasgow Goldfish Bowl. I think that I would have him as a to be confirmed. But if you're basing it on this season, he's a miss, in my opinion.
And then the one that I think's interesting in the list is Connor Barron. Like, where do we sit on him? Because I'm not sure, for what I've seen this season, that I see the long-term vision of him being a mainstay in any Rangers team. I think at best he's going to be a squad player and he'll do a certain job for you in certain games, potentially the games where you're probably not going to have the majority of the ball. Am I being too harsh there, Ross?
I love him, mate. I love him. Mate, I think he is another Ryan Jack, mate. People thought Ryan Jack was bang average, but you need to get the right mix in midfield in order to allow him to just shut up. What we've also not got this season, I think, going back again, if we played the Gerrard formation, Barron's the man that you could play there, and he's got the acumen about him to go and cover and put out fires. He's not as flashy as Raskin, but I think he's game intelligence. If we could get players around about him, and it's not even around about him, see right now, we are playing him sitting, and him and Raskin sometimes want to do the same job, but if you think back to Ryan Jack, you had Barisic and Tavernier bombing it up the line. Tavernier's stay at home now, isn't he? He's a stay at home house husband now. He doesn't really go venture that far up. I think Connor Barron is a player who will grow into the Rangers jersey, and I definitely think he's got his uses. He's kind of been overshadowed by the resurgence of Raskin. If you think to the first few games of the season, mate, Connor Barron was very much the sweetheart, the darling of the Rangers support, how great it was. Then Raskin came in and Barron got kind of shunted out in order to make way for what is now a Belgian international. But I think Connor Barron will prove to be a very steady player for Rangers over the next X amount of seasons.
Ross, what is the right blend in midfield to take forward in terms of recruitment? Because obviously Andrew raises a point in regards to he wants a big physical beast in midfield. And is that what we're needing in the 6th position? What is the right way to play? Is it going back to a Gerrard type formation? And what's the blend we need there? What is the missing ingredient at the minute? Are we needing somebody in the mould of a Glenn Kamara, in the mould of a younger version of a Steve Davis? What is currently missing for the midfield? Because I would say that the 3 that we've got, if we were to play that way, I think it might be a bit disjointed. I think that there's somebody for that trio that's currently missing just now. And for me, I would like to play a big physical 6 and have 2 sort of pressing 8s, but that might not be the right answer. It all depends on who the new manager will be coming forward. But in terms of you, if you were recruiting for Rangers this summer, what would be your sort of main parts of the jigsaw in the midfield?
Can we put Scotty Arfield in a time machine? Mate, Scott Arfield could come in and still play in our midfield now. I think a Barron playing the kind of Jack role, Raskin giving you the energy, box to box. I think the missing piece is that in the Scottish game, Diamande wants to take too long on the ball and doesn't offer us enough going forward. I think somebody in the mould of Scott Arfield, late runs into the box, being there for cutbacks. You look at us now, a lot of the time we're just firing big, high, hopeful balls in, and it's why when we're chasing goals, teams love it. See a big Joe Shaughnessy at Dundee, he'll header the ball away all game. See when you're playing against Hibs,
Rocky Bashiri.
Somebody told me today he's only 25. There's absolutely no danger he's only 25.
He's walking about with Big Canu's passport.
He's mate, but players like that, they're quite happy to just attack the ball all game long. I think us having somebody in the midfield that's able to break the lines and get forward is what we're looking for. Paul's just on the same wavelength as me, because I think Lyle Cameron could give us that next season. People will tell me, Dundee player, the boy McGowan's not done too bad across the city. He's come in and played a lot more than folk would have thought in a team that's absolutely can't in the league. I think if we had somebody that could break the lines and drag midfields about, and 2 wing backs that could actually play as wing backs, I think Raskin, Barron, and another potentially Cameron. Maybe that's a bit lightweight, Davey. I get what you're saying, but then you look at the boy Engels that's game, who's about 6'4" and pretty bit and doesn't really dominate games in this league either. So as we said last week, it's a weird place to play your football, Scotland, isn't it? It's weird.
Definitely. I just think it's because the only reason I say add some sort of level of physicality throughout the spine of the team is because it's the jobbers we're struggling against. And that really worries me going forward, because we've never had a manager that's come in right away and shown them the sort of, whether you call it disrespect or whatever, but the contempt to just be like, we're Rangers, we don't give a who you are. That's what's been missing. And instead we're like, oh no, we're going to Easter Road on Sunday. Oh no, we're going to Punditry on Sunday. Oh no, we're going to St Mirren on Sunday. That's the wrong mentality. And I think the players are sort of let that fester among themselves in the last couple of years. And I think if we can look imposing that might help our confidence on the pitch. If you've got somebody that can measure up to a Rocky Bashiri, as you mentioned, physically, that's what's sadly lacking. And I just think that there is a couple of ingredients missing. However, a new manager could come in and totally rip that up and change it. If he's got a philosophy that's good enough to beat the cannon fodder, that's ultimately what we need. And while we're talking about managers, do you want to come in there, Ross?
We've got somebody that can match up physically with Rocky Bashiri and Joe Shaughnessy, but we're playing him as a left winger. We've got somebody that can take the ball in with a big, horrible defender and can just nutmeg him and score goals, but we're playing him for somebody who doesn't want to be involved in the physical battle, wants to throw himself to the deck every single time Andy goes near him. So that I think we are the masters of our own downfall, because we've got somebody that can do that, and we're not playing him in that position. After him scoring 12 goals in 14 games, we are now playing him out on the left wing and asking him to run by people.
Now, I quite like that you've mentioned this, because I actually want to touch on the manager. I think everybody sort of played it safe with their comments on Barry Ferguson. But I just want to focus on Rangers domestically since Barry Ferguson came to the helm. So he's played 6 league games, right? Started at Kilmarnock and then ended at Punditry at the weekend. So the first game was Kilmarnock. Obviously, we won 4-2. Then we get beat with Motherwell 2-1 at home. We beat Celtic 3-2 away. We beat Dundee 4-3 away. We beat with Hibs 2-0 at home. And then we drew with Aberdeen 2 each. So that's played 6, won 3, lost 2, drew 1, 10 points out of 18, 13 goals conceded, 14 goals scored. Now, on the basis of that being a Rangers side, as you would say, maybe starting a season, if you were displaying that level of form, you're probably going to end up running about mid-table, maybe lower end of the bottom 6 or top end of the bottom 6. Do you know what I mean? And I just feel that how we're shaping up, how we look at set pieces, how we look for throw-ins. We've got a really soft centre. It's repetitive patterns in play. We're losing the same goals all the time. Simple mistakes, repetitive mistakes. Where are we under Barry Ferguson tactically, Ross?
Rotten, to be honest. Mate, folk are hanging their hat on the results in Europe and against Celtic. Phil Clement got us where we are in Europe up to that time, and Phil Clement outplayed Celtic in his last 2 Old Firm games, where again through VAR we were denied a penalty that would have won us the cup final. Snorri games we've struggled in, and this what Barry Ferguson's brought in is a siege mentality and a never say die attitude, but you can't afford to be going 2-0 down every game. That's where we're at, mate. But that's what happens when you, mate, I hate to go our old ground, but we spoke about this last week. That's what would happen if you employed a Davie Martindale, somebody whose managing isn't very good in the lower leagues, and then putting him into Rangers. But I must say, mate, I noticed last week after our pod, we seemed to open the floodgates. I heard we were talking a wee bit about how other podcasts have not really been talking about the Cotton thing, and maybe been a bit scared to say Ferguson's no all that. But I noticed a few pods early on after ours were kind of broaching these subjects, and I'm not saying they copied us or that, but they probably did. I'm not saying, but I think everybody's now starting to feel a bit more open and able to speak about these kind of opinions, Davie. And the Ferguson one for me has been a non-starter for the start. I don't think he's as staunch as he makes it to be either, to be honest. As I say, but he's had plenty of chat, stuck the boot into his plenty of times on his media stuff and that. And that's exactly it, Paul. Being a Rangers man doesn't just get you a free pass. I was on the Rangers Review members question and answers with Derek Clark yesterday, and he was talking about if I get through against Bilbao, he'd give him the job. And I'm like, that's exactly why we just sacked a manager. That's exactly why Van Bronckhorst gets sacked. They were doing it in Europe. The problem we've got is we're a big, massive worldwide team that play with a small team mentality.
What I was going to say to you is even Pedro Caixinha won his first game at home at Ibrox in the league. I'm sure we beat Hamilton 4-1 that day. But Ferguson still in any competition has failed to win at Ibrox. And for me, that's a concern. You know, how long's that going? If that maintains for the rest of the season, and I know saying that it doesn't really matter, but if you're looking at it, we've got 3 home games in a row, which are Celtic, Aberdeen in the midweek, and then Dundee United. And I just kind of feel, looking at the fixtures, absolutely none of them at home is a given. And that's a worry, because you look at the squad and there is certain quality there. But under the coaching staff, I just don't see a way of playing an identity. And I know Clement struggled playing the same way all the time. But under Ferguson, I'm not seeing the fruits of anything positive to cling on to. I think we've just put all our eggs in the basket for Thursday. And that might be the right thing or the wrong thing. But say for talk's sake, Thursday doesn't go the way we want it to go, then where does that leave us? I genuinely worry in terms of, I think between now and the end of the season in the league, Hibs could get closer to us than we could to get Celtic. Do you think that's a fair comment?
Potentially. Mate, the comments are right. You can't just blame it all on Ferguson. But Ferguson is the one that was playing a back 5 against Dundee. Ferguson's the one that was playing a back 5 against Hibs, and we're getting battered. So, I mean, you're dealing with somebody that was the Alloa, got sacked for Alloa and got sacked for Clyde in his last 2 jobs. So we're not talking about a good manager, right? We're not. But I agree with what they're saying. The players will throw anybody under a bus. That Rangers team, through its core, through its leadership group, they'll throw anybody under a bus, whether it's Barry Ferguson or whether it's Jose Mourinho. But the thing is that we're rewarding, Barry Ferguson's rewarding failure. He kept Jack Butland in 2 weeks too long. Dessers is still playing despite no being good enough, no being clinical enough. So he's not making the big decisions when it really matters. And I hope on Thursday he proves me wrong, but Dessers will be stinking the place up again on Thursday.
See, I know that a few people have made the point. I know Gary made the point on the podcast last night, is that Dessers is obviously going to play because he thinks that he can, obviously he was rested yesterday, but the fact that he can stretch teams, run in behind, run the channels, is that what we need on Thursday? Because I'd suggest that when we get the ball, you're probably more inclined to hope that somebody's going to hold it up. And by holding it up, that gets more players in and around them and makes you move maybe 10, 15 yards further up the pitch. What is the remedy to play against them? Because I think they're going to press us high and come at us, and we're going to have to soak up considerable amounts of pressure. And with that, I think we need an outball. For me, Igaman would be that outball, Ross, but I just don't know that Ferguson will play that way. I think he's convinced that Dessers is his main man, and I can't see Igaman starting the bench. But ultimately, what I would say is if Dessers was on the bench, I'd be happy that Dessers was the man that could maybe come on and do something for us. I think he'd be a stronger option for the bench than what Igaman would, because I don't think Igaman can make the impact chasing the game. Whereas I think Igaman can help you maybe get a lead in the game. It's kind of where my thought process is. Where do you stand on that?
When defenders come off a game against Cyril Dessers, 8 games out of 10, they'll know they've been in a battle. Igamani's going to give them a battle every single opportunity. Mate, I'm very much with you. I think if you play Igamani as your focal point, the onus is on Czerny and other whoever's playing in the positions to run through. We've seen over the last X amount of games, how many assists should Igamani have playing for that deeper role? So see if he's dropping in to keep the ball in and protect the ball and allow us to get up the park, we need to have a game plan that allows other people to get beyond. And it's back to that whole, we need an Scotty Arfield type player. I get frustrated talking about it, because the thing is as well, we talk about this player trading model and being able to get rid of it. We should be showcasing a man at the highest stage. He's the best player we've got available, but CGM's had it on the nose there. Czerny should be playing off at Igamani so that when he holds the ball up, we can have a Czerny running in behind. Danilo offered us it during that spell earlier on in the season. I thought Danilo, for what I seen at the weekend, was barking like a pen full of dogs. But on the, I think I'm struggling to even think to put it into words. But
what would you think then? So if we talk about that and think about the lineup, do you think he's going to go with a 5 at the back? So do you think Inciala comes in with Suter and Balogun, or do you think he moves Tav into centre half and use Ridvan as a right wing back and Yefti as a left wing back? Because my worry would be that last week we nullified them with Ridvan at left wing back and Tav at right wing back, and I wouldn't want to move for that. So I think there's potential for maybe Inciala coming in. I think Ridvan at right wing back would be a worry for me, Ross. Would it not be for you?
So he's played right wing back in a few high profile games, hasn't he? He's
he played it there for a spell as well.
Did not play right wing back in one of the old firms as well.
Aye, the one
played in one. Aye. So he's got the ability to do it, but I think if you're playing Ridvan at right back, then it does away with your opportunity of going down the line. And if you're playing Jeffy on the other side, his final was brutal anyway. So it does away with the point of playing wing backs if they're no offering you anything going forward. And it literally is just a flat back 5. So that's what it would be for me. It'd be a flat back 5 rather than a 3 that can switch to a 5 when we're defending.
And would you think Cenk Hagi will play? Because obviously he played last week, and I was surprised in terms of how well he done in a defensive capacity, because I didn't know he had that in his game. But that might have just been, as you said, the siege mentality, been done with the red card, maybe galvanised their squad at the time. Obviously, he's got that obvious quality, and you can see that with his finish. The problem is it doesn't happen often enough. Do you think he maybe comes in for Barron? What would your midfield be, Ross, if you're going with that 5 at the back?
If you're going with a 5 at the back, mate, I would go Hagi. I'd have Raskin sitting, Diamande and Hagi ahead of him. If you want to go with a 4, I would potentially play Barron and Hagi drops out, because I think Barron can play that role in between the defence and midfield to mop up anything that gets through, put out fires. So I think the team, there's so many variables in the team, Davie. When you look at defensively, is it going to be a 3? Is it going to be a 4? You've got your midfield. Are you going to go with that flair player, attacker that they try and open the door, or are you going to steady the ship? And then when you start looking towards up front, are you going to play with 2 wingers, or are you going to play with 2 inside 10s, or are you going to play with 4-1-1? Mate, there's a lot of options. What I would say also is not many of the fringe players that got a chance at the weekend have brought themselves into contention for it either, which is another worry. I thought that people would have been busting a gut at the weekend to try and at least give themselves a bit of hope.
No, absolutely. I think that is a good place to end it there, Ross. But just before we finish the podcast, how do you see it going on Thursday, mate? What does your gut tell you, or does your head tell you something different?
Mate, I've actually got a good feeling about it, to be honest. I've got a good feeling that, again, but being the underdog suits us. I say it all the time, a big, massive worldwide club with a wee team mentality, that when the chips are against us, we'll galvanise and go for it. But when it comes to being the big dog and the big team and that's when we struggle. Would it surprise you, Davie, if we went across there and got a result and moved into the semis?
Probably no, mate. No, the way it's been going for us this season, I kind of feel that we've got one more big performance in us, and I certainly hope it comes on Thursday.
Aye, I think it's bipolar FC, innit? It's back to the exact same as I said last week. You could go there and win. You could go there and win 3-0, or you could go there and get beat 3-0, and there's no in between.
No, absolutely no. And for what it's worth, I certainly hope it doesn't go to extra time, because I'm up early for my work on Friday. But certainly, as long as we win at the end of it, Paul, I'll certainly take that. Ross, I thoroughly enjoyed your company the night, mate. Thanks very much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, mate. It's always a pleasure to join you on the unconventional version of the NARP. What is it Gary called it? The delinquent version or something? Was it he called it last night?
I'll take it. I've been called
That's what it felt like, Davie. That's what it felt like. It hurt me in the heart.
And just before we go, if you head over to X for all yous on social media, you'll find the link for the night. In fact, I think it's on the YouTube as well, for the night at Oswald's on May the 16th. Head over, and if you contribute to helping Walter's campaign, we'd very much appreciate it. So just before we go, it's just time for me to say it's good night from him, and it's good night from me. Good night.